Hello, everyone. This is Eric Allen from Admin Advantage.
Muted.
To today's webinar, Making Your Application Stand Out in 2013. I'd like to thank Beat the GMAT and the Beat the GMAT team for inviting us to conduct this webinar today. The webinar is generally going to be focused on, the pre-application kind of strategies, thinking about applying later in 2013, the types of things that you need to do to really prepare yourself for success for the application season coming up. So look forward to going through this journey with you, and certainly at the end of this, if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know. You can go ahead and send in your questions via the webinar, and we'll go ahead and address those at the end. A little bit about me. So I'm one of the co-founders of Admin Advantage. I was kind of a strange background. So I worked in engineering. I was a chemical engineer, and I worked in consulting. I went to Brown undergrad, and from the consulting world, I started a company in pharmaceutical software, and that's where I kind of fell in love with the entrepreneurship direction. From after selling my company, I went to business school at the Wharton School of Business. I was admissions director at AdCom there, and after that, I worked at GE Capital for a while and started this company back in 2007. So and I've been doing that ever since, and certainly having a ball working with some of my classmates from Wharton. It's been a fantastic ride for me. A little bit about us. So, we're an admissions consulting company. There are a number of them out there. Obviously, I think that when I think about the company and how we differentiate, a lot of it is around the client focus. So we spend quite a bit of time getting to know our clients, really having an established process of really understanding them and really understanding their brand and what makes them different. If you think about the admissions process, 60–70% of the people who actually apply to the schools you see down there are admissible, meaning they have the appropriate scores, they have solid work experience within kind of the general median range, good recommendations, all of those wonderful things. So what really helps you stand out from the crowd? It's really the delivery of your information. What kinds of things have you done to differentiate yourself? There were a lot of applications that I read as a reviewer where you say, hey, this person's really strong, but it doesn't come across in the application. So there's a real need for prospects to be able to put that in a very concise, well-articulated way, and we certainly help our clients from the beginning to the end. The other piece of differentiation, I think, is really in our team. We go through a very rigorous process of selection as well as training of our consultants, all of whom have graduated from top MBA programs, and they get compensated based on your success. So a large part of their compensation is based on your review of the consultant, as well as whether or not you get into school. We think that makes a ton of sense. We think it aligns interests, and we also think it's a huge differentiator for us. So that's a little bit about us, and you can certainly find out more online. So let's jump into building the brand. So building the brand, what does kind of that mean? We get a lot of people who say, hey, I really want to go to business school. I really want to understand how I can get in. And I think, we believe that the first step to that is building your brand. And what is a brand? It's really the identity of you. In general, it's the identity of whatever the entity is, and it really is all about the personality and experience that when you think of that entity, what does that kind of generate in terms of an experience, the visualization of who that person is or what that entity is. For established brands, it's really driven by the historical experience and the perception of that brand. But for you, it's really driven by that application, right? So it's the application, it's the resume, it's the interview, it's the recommenders. All of that is an establishment of your brand, a real small slice of your brand, but nonetheless, really the only opportunity you have to articulate that brand to the admissions committee. So it's never really too early to build that brand, whether it's going out and reaching out to some of these schools, talking to alums and that kind of thing. So a few brand examples, so we can really get on the same page with respect to this whole brand theme. Amazon.com. So one-stop shop, very efficient, lowest price. Although some would argue that it's not always the lowest price, but I certainly believe that most of the time when you search for a specific item, that Amazon's going to come up with a pretty low price. It's easy, and they have very good customer service. McDonald's, prevalent, certainly within 5 square miles of my office. There's a number of them. Convenient, consistent. You may not love the quality of the food, but you know what quality you're going to get, and it's affordable. So someone seeing a McDonald's sign, whether it's in Japan or or South America or the U.S., they're going to generally know they're going to get a consistent, quality product out of a McDonald's. Admin Advantage, we like to think that people think about us, they think about experience and insight and our rigorous process to kind of build out the brand and the differentiation strategies, our customer service, and ultimately performance. So those are 3 examples of brands established by entities, and we're going to talk a little bit more about how you can establish yourself as a brand leading up to the application season in 2013. When I think about brand, I think about kind of these 3 components, right? So there's a career component, which a lot of people talk about on the Beat the GMAT community. So I work here. Is this enough work experience? Is it the right work experience? What do I need to do with respect to that? Personal, which is not talked about very much in the community, could be a lot of things. Maybe there are personal struggles, maybe it's familial situation, whatever it is that kind of makes you or provides you kind of that background to be a business leader. And finally, community, and probably the area that I stress the most, because most people really don't focus on this as a differentiator, but I really believe it's a differentiator. What is your leadership in the community? What kinds of things have you shown or done in the community to show your business leadership? I'm truly a believer that really great business leaders lead in everything that they do. So not just in the workplace, but also in the community. If you think about great CEOs, entrepreneurs, many of them are very involved, not just in their job as CEO, but they're very involved in the community and taking leadership roles and really bringing their business skill set to the community and trying to help others. So that's certainly something that AdComs look for as a potential differentiator. We'll get into that very shortly. So from the career perspective, so the first thing that you need to look at from a branding perspective is, what do I bring to the table from a career perspective? Is it your corporate experience? Looking at that, what was your career path? What was your general focus in your career? How did your career develop? So a lot of times we will do these free consultations, and we'll look back at careers that people have, 4 or 5 years, and they'll 1 year here and a year and a half here, and they're not really tied together. So when you think about making career moves, as you're kind of establishing yourself and getting ready for business school, think about each move and what are you looking to achieve with each move? Are you kind of focused more on an industry career path? So maybe you're very interested in energy, but you have different functions within the energy space. Or maybe you're in a competency career path where you're very interested in marketing and you'll do marketing in different industries. So it doesn't matter if you're in healthcare or technology or energy, you're very focused in marketing. The other part that you need to think about in terms of your career is resume gaps. Certainly in the last couple of years with the challenges globally, there's an understanding that there are going to be layoffs. There are going to be potential gaps in work experience. The biggest issue with that is, what did you do with that gap? A lot of times people will say, well, I was looking for a job. And that's okay, that's acceptable. But the people who really differentiate themselves from others are those that go above and beyond that. I was looking for a job, but then I went and also, took a course, or I volunteered in my community because, I had been working so much, I really hadn't had a chance to do that. Or I took a step in the right direction in terms of, I know I want to change my career path. I'm currently an engineer. I wanted to get into consulting, so I did some pro bono consulting work to really get a feel for what the industry is. So when you have a resume gap, if you're currently in a situation where you're unemployed or looking for work, make sure you take advantage of that opportunity, because that's really what it is. It's an opportunity for you to develop your skills in a lot of different ways. Logical career transition, we talked a little bit about that in terms of kind of your career path, but does it make sense? Was it in a role where you gained additional experience? Was it a role that made sense for you to set something else up in the future and something that's explainable? You want to understand the corporate brands along the way. So, a lot of people who, work for small companies will come and say, I didn't really have the corporate brand of, a top-notch consulting firm or a top-notch bank or, large conglomerate like, a Siemens or a GE or something like that. And that's okay, but corporate brand does help in some instances because it's a known entity. They know that they screen people, so if you're able to get through that, that shows something as well. And it's just kind of one of those things that does give some comfort. But if you're not in a situation where you have a large brand, you also have an opportunity to kind of explain to the admissions committee what your company does, and hopefully if you're in kind of a small and mid-sized company, you had an opportunity to grow a lot faster, which would mitigate some of the lack of corporate brand. And then finally, with respect to corporate experience, leadership training. Did you have an opportunity to formally and informally gain some additional leadership training that would give an indication that you're even further along in terms of your business and leadership career? In terms of responsibilities as it relates to career, this is really an important one because a lot of people, coming out of college, they go into situations where, they're a really good contributor, and that's okay. It's okay to be a good contributor. It's okay to come in and add significant value. Your recommenders will support that. But it's great when you have an opportunity to be a driver, and that's what I meant. Like if you go to a small company, you'll have more of an opportunity, hopefully, to be a driver, to take a leadership role. And that's another way to kind of differentiate yourself. So as you're thinking about career paths and career opportunities, think about, hey, will I get an opportunity to be a driver or will I just be a contributor? Management experience, leadership roles. Many of you will likely not have an opportunity to have management experience for full-time. Executive MBA, that's something that they're looking for. But obviously anytime you can get an opportunity to lead others, whether formally or informally, that's fantastic. Also, look for stretch roles. I think that one of the things that I always look for was, okay, this person moved from here to there, but did they really stretch themselves? Did they just move because they were going to make an extra couple $1,000 or whatever your currency may be, or was it something where they were really getting an opportunity to learn more early in their career, and maybe they took a little bit less money? So I always like to see people who challenge themselves in terms of the type of role, the type of responsibilities they had. And then finally, on the career front, they're going to look for demonstrated excellence. So this kind of goes without saying, but tangible achievements. What is your promotional history and time? I always was weary about people who moved around a lot because you wonder, like, hey, is this person just constantly going to look for different things, and you really don't have any idea of whether or not they were going to be promoted and how quickly they might be promoted. So before you jump to the next thing, the grass is always greener somewhere else, but think about it in the context of how far away am I to a promotion, to really demonstrating my performance, not just saying, hey, I performed really well, but actually showing that through some type of promotion. All right, on the personal side, so clearly academic background and GMAT are kind of, I group them together as kind of an important grouping. they want to see that you have the ability to perform in business school. So they're going to look at what undergraduate institution did you go to. Not everyone has to go to a top 10 school, but obviously if you did really well at a top 10 school, that's going to help, right? And if you went to a school that was good but not amazing, they're going to look at that and say, okay, how did they perform versus that peer group? So the expectation is that you might do even a little bit better than say the median at a school that's maybe not as strong as some of the top schools. So that's important. They're going to look for GPA. I realize that a number of prospects don't have a GPA, but they want to look at it in the context of how did you place versus your peers. So were you a top 10%, a topper? Were you a top 25%? Where did you fall versus your peers? And each school, we get this question a lot. Each business school has kind of an evaluation of the different schools globally. So probably one of my top 10 questions is, I don't have a GMAT or GPA rather. How are they going to know, the strength of my school? Trust me, they know. They do this for a living, and they know the different schools, and they have a history of the performance from each school. GMAT and also including GRE. Obviously they're going to look at the score, but also how does your score complement your background? What I mean by that is if you're an engineer or a very technical person, you deal a lot with numbers. Certainly the expectation is that your GMAT or GRE quant scores are going to be higher, but it would be great if you had scores that were good and also had a complement to that. So maybe your verbal scores are especially high, even though you have a technical background. That to me always, and when you talk to AdComs, always was a good sign that the person is very well balanced and will probably do well. Finally, the intangibles. So, were there things that you were able to overcome in your life that you want to speak about in your essays that really show your character and your strength as a potential business leader? Roadblocks in your career, you had to work your way through school. Despite that, you were able to get a 3.4 GPA, which you're very proud of because you work 40 hours a week. That says something about you. That says something about your character and your focus and your determination. Were there personal tragedies? Hopefully there were not. But how did you respond to that? Obviously, in a business situation, a lot of times things come up that can be very challenging, and you want to see that a person has character and is able to bounce back from problems and challenges. Do you have a very interesting passion, something that, keep it clean, but, something that you're very focused in, spend a lot of time with? People want to know about you. And especially looking at the applications this year, the schools have moved really away from kind of the very technical questions, and they want to know a little bit more about you. How do you react in different situations? Tell me about a time when very behavioral type questions. They really want to understand you. So, your personal brand is becoming increasingly more important because a lot of the people, as we mentioned before, have really good application backgrounds in terms of corporate experience and things like that, and they want to know a little bit more about the person they're going to get. All right, one of my favorites, so community. So often overlooked, but it can be a real differentiator, especially when you look at candidates like, a lot of times we'll have discussions with candidates, and they'll start off with, well, I'm an Indian IT male, and I know it's going to be very difficult for me to get into school. And look, it's a very challenging demographic, but oftentimes community can be the differentiator for those who are in a very challenging demographic. It also can give you an opportunity for certain scholarships and the ability to demonstrate leadership. But really find a passion, find something that you're interested in. Don't just go and volunteer at some local organization because you want to get into business school. That's not very genuine, and I think oftentimes people will see through that. I call it don't be a drive-through volunteer. So find something that's sustainable for you, something that you can be passionate about, in an area you can really make an impact. It's a lot better to go to one place and know that you're going to try to make an impact and spend some real time, maybe take a leadership role or something like that, versus saying that, hey, I'm involved in 4 different NGOs, or 4 different community organizations. Really think about that depth versus breadth concept. Okay. So continuing with that, connect the community experience with your brand. So an example here is you have a soccer league that your kid belongs to, and you're interested in moving into marketing, but you currently work in, I don't know, finance. So you don't really have a way to get into marketing. You're saying, I need to go to business school so that I can get into marketing. Well, one of the things that will help your brand is when you can truly show that you have taken steps to learn more about marketing, what that'll be, and you are taking steps to build skills in that area. So maybe you take a marketing role within that soccer league to kind of help them out on a pro bono basis. So you don't really have the requisite skill set necessarily to do that, but certainly in that situation, they're willing to take you on. So find opportunities for you to pursue what you say you want to do in terms of any career transition, and that's going to make for a better case for your overall application. Another example might be you take a treasurer position in the Community Homeowners Association if you want to get into finance. You've never done finance before, but you really like it, and you want to try it out. What a great opportunity to get involved in your community and also build a skill set in the finance area. So think about ways for you to really connect your brand and your story with the community involvement. And I think that if you're passionate about it, if you're interested in it, it'll really come through in your application. So a quick story, 2 quick cases on this that I thought I would bring in since we are all thinking about business school. The new Coke story. So Coke introduced a new Coke in April of '85, and immediately, the Cokies, I call them, the public perception was terrible. And so right away, Coke introduced Coke Classic, which was the old flavor of Coca-Cola. So this new Coke, for those of you who don't know, many of you were probably just being born at that point. I'm sad to say that I was quite alive and old enough to remember. But the new Coke was basically tasted a lot more like Pepsi. It was a little sweeter and had just a different taste. And so they reintroduced Coke Classic, and they actually made quite a nice rebound. So the brand lesson there is stay true to yourself. Don't try to be, you get on the boards, and a lot of times on Beat the GMAT, people will talk about, hey, my experience is you should do this, and you should do that, and you should do this. And sometimes that's true, but oftentimes it's not. There's no one recipe for you to be successful. You really should be true to who you are and yourself, and certainly someone who may have a similar background to yours may have been accepted to your dream school with a certain background, but that's not to say that you won't be accepted with your background. So be true to yourself. Make sure that you know what you're trying to accomplish in your career, in your life, and stay true to that. The Apple turnaround story. We may need to, at some point in the next 10 years, think about another turnaround story, as I'm starting to see a little bit of a peak there. But in terms of Apple Computer, or at the time Apple Computer, they were really struggling. Apple was really struggling to build a computer market. And they said, hey, we want to really go after this market, and we can't get any traction. But they realized that their core competency was in innovation, in building really innovative consumer products, because the Apple back then, Apple Computer, their products were really cool, and they were really new and fresh, and had kind of a different perspective. Well, you all know the story about Apple. They had the iPod and the iPad and the iPhone and all the wonderful gadgets, and they realized that they were really a consumer products innovative company. So they focused on their competency, which truly was innovation and not computer building. And we all know how the computer producers fared over the last 25 years versus Apple. So the brand lesson there is really determine your competency, right? If you're an energy banker, are you a deal guy, or are you an energy person, right? So think about that, and think about that in the context of how you want to establish yourself in your application, and how you want to think about your career going forward. So in summary on the brand piece, build your brand proactively, right? So manage your career, think about, what you want to do in your career in general. Build and cultivate advocates, so recommenders, people who can support you, people who can really push you through this application process. Take stretch roles to the extent that you can, opportunities for you to get outside of your comfort zone and build a new skill set. Make an impact in your career, but also in the community. To the extent that you can, it's a real differentiator, and it's the right thing to do. I mean, I can tell you, I'm very involved with the Leukemia Lymphoma Society, and we do, we're involved with multiple sclerosis. We do a few things that we're very passionate about because of kind of personal impact. But, I never have time, but I always enjoy the investment of my time when I take the time to do it. I mean, it gives you additional perspective, and it just makes you feel, it gives you an opportunity to kind of recharge and think that, hey, whatever I'm dealing with in my company or whatever I'm dealing with on the business side is not nearly as important as the time that I can spend there. So truly excellence in all that you do will really lead you to being successful in one of the top brands. So now that you kind of have this game plan of how to develop your brand going into the application season, whether it's this year or in the future, now you kind of need an action plan to make yourself successful. So I just have a few tips here that you need to think about going into the application season. School specifics. So first of all, you need to decide, is this the year to go? This decision point is really important. And I really start with clients asking that question because it really is going to drive your application strategy. Do you want to go this year? Do you have to go this year? And generally, the people that have to go are people who are either completely bored in their current jobs, just at the right time in their personal life, or just need an exit, just need something to freshen them up, or are really ready to kind of pursue a passion. Those are people who are kind of thinking, hey, I definitely want to go this year. And then there are other people who are in really good jobs, and they're like, I kind of want to go to business school. I always have. And if I get into these 5 schools, then I'll go. Otherwise, I'll worry about trying again in future years. So you need to think about that. You need to really think through that, understand kind of what your drivers are and how important it is to go this year, because it's going to drive a lot of your application strategy. Second point, you need to think about what type of MBA you're looking for. We do a whole webinar on this, but generally full-time, part-time executive MBA, 1 year full-time, 2 year. There's a lot of different programs now. There's online. So think about in the sense of, what am I trying to get out? Full-time, you're going to get immersed into the experience. You're going to probably build a little bit better network because you just frankly have more time to drink and socialize and more time in class, etc. Part-time is really going to get you a lot of that functional information. It's going to give you some of that networking, but maybe not quite as much as a full-time. But you're going to be able, the opportunity cost is lower because you can continue in your job. Same with executive MBA. Executive MBA and part-time being pretty similar, except for the fact that the people in the actual programs are a little bit different. And those take a real serious commitment to be able to stay with your company and also attend business schools. So quite a commitment on your front. Figure out what round you want to go to. So many people will come to us, and I mean we're having people now saying, hey, should I apply now for round 3? And I don't think that's a great idea generally, but think about when you want to do this, target a round and go for it. Make the decision as early as you can, because the earlier the better. The more focused you'll be, the more time you'll have to work on your application, and it will really come through in your overall application process. And then obviously a lot of the schools have a fall and a spring cohort, so think about that and what your timing is going to be with respect to that. Testing strategy. So, I'm kind of the opinion that you generally want to know where you stand from a test perspective. So you can, I suggest everyone go out and just take, a sample GMAT or take a sample GRE and just figure out where you are. That second bullet is really important. I can't remember too many clients, and we've worked with, over 1,000, since we started the company. So I can't think of, any client off the top of my head who's told me that they're going to score, 720 and they've done better. I mean, but I can think, I'm sure there are some out there, but I can think of a ton that have said, hey, I'm going to score 720 and come up with a 620. So, know that your pre-test ranges are not necessarily going to be, what you score come test time. You're a little more nervous, time becomes an issue, you may be more tired, whatever the case may be. But just understand that if you go into this process naked with no GMAT GRE score, then you're kind of putting yourself in a challenging situation, because if you don't score what you're expecting to score, you may be in quite a pickle, if you will, with respect to maybe some of the schools that you really don't have a great chance at. The other things associated with kind of trying to get ready and making a really strong application in advance is really you need your familial support. So whether you're going to go part-time, exec, full-time, this is a lot of work. And, if you go full-time, there may be a financial drain. If you go part-time, there's going to be a time drain. You're going to be more tired. Do you have a financial plan in place to be successful through however long this period is going to be? Are you able to tell your job about your plans? Can you, build that relationship now so that, come application time, they're not only supportive of you, but also ready to write a recommendation? And, do you need to make any adjustments in your career situation? So maybe, you're a top flight salesperson and you want to go into a part-time MBA program. Do you need to make an adjustment where you say, hey, for the next 2 years, I really want to move from this role to this role. I know it's a little bit of a step back for me, but frankly, I think it's important for me to do that so that I have a little bit more time for the MBA. So those are some very key decisions that you need to make really in advance of the application process, so that you're prepared to attack it aggressively. So some general tips and strategies, and then we'll jump into some questions here. Treat the application process like a job, because it really is. It's a lot of work, and you don't want to go through it multiple times. You want to do it one time if you can. You want to focus on it. You want to put every effort you can into it. You want to make whatever investment you need to make your GMAT or application successful. And you need to carve out time out of your schedule. Whatever the case may be, whether it's building out your resume, going to an event that the school that you're interested in is having in your local area, whether it's listening to webinars like you're doing right now, or scheduling appointments or visits, you need to carve out time out of your daily schedule in order to make this the most successful process possible. So I suggest to our folks, maintain a work plan or a calendar and try to stick to the schedule. Like, I have to be completely honest. There are times when I'll make appointments for myself to do personal things. I go work out to my wife's dismay, and I just blow it off. Don't do that, with this stuff. I mean, try to stick to a schedule. If you're, as you're approaching this and you say that, hey, I want to make sure that I study my GMAT book by this date or have everything done, really focus on that. Stay up until 2 in the morning if you have to try to meet these types of schedules, because it will really help if you have everything planned out and the applications come out in July or whatever the case may be. You're ready to go. Incorporate flex time. So make sure you have a little bit of buffer time for the times that things happen at work or things happen personally where you're not able to kind of stick to that schedule. And then take days on. So I say, use vacation days. So use a vacation day to go visit school. Use a vacation day to write your essays or work on your application or whatever the case may be in preparation, for the application. But definitely take this on as a very serious challenge for you. Schedule these school visits. Incorporate them into family trips. So a lot of folks who have kids, they may have a spring break. Maybe you have an opportunity to take your family to go see the area that they may live. If you live in the Midwest and you're headed out to the East Coast, Great trip for kids, right? Go to New York and see the Empire State Building, and also check out a few business schools. If you're going abroad, see if you can find an opportunity to fly out to Asia and say, hey, really sell, your partner on that. Hey, look, this is what it's going to be like. It's going to be fantastic. Why don't you come with me? We'll go visit. So definitely take the time to visit as many schools as you can. And while you go on those visits, try to build some relationships with AdComs. Oftentimes they'll come out to do formal presentations. Make sure you're going to those presentations. Talk to alums in your area so that you can kind of build that relationship, because you never know who the alumni are talking to. You never know how that relationship can kind of manifest itself. And oftentimes, I've been in these rooms. They'll have conversations about, hey, yeah, I met this person. Really impressed. They ask some really good questions, and certainly I've been on the other side of that as well. Yeah, I talked to this person. They really didn't understand who we were. They mentioned a program that another school actually did. We don't do that. So I just don't think this person is ready for business school. So that can serve to your advantage or your disadvantage. And then finally, tie up all the loose ends. So as you approach the application season, whether you're looking for kind of spring applications or in the fall, finish your testing so you don't have to worry about that. I really recommend not going in without a test, at least one. Complete any classes that you may need to complete to improve your GPA. So oftentimes you can it's called an alternative transcript, take some additional classes to really help mitigate a little bit lower GPA. So take all of that stuff and handle all of that in advance. You're in a pretty good time right now. Sure, some of you may be applying kind of in the March, April timeframe. Some of you again, in the June timeframe for some of the other programs. But a lot of you on the call, I would imagine, will be thinking about applying next year, starting kind of in the summer. You have plenty of time to go out, build an alternative transcript, take a course in GMAT GRE, study on your own, whatever the case may be, but proactively tie up those loose ends so when application season starts, you can really focus on the application itself and not worry about all the rest. So with that, I'd like to again thank Beat the GMAT for giving this opportunity to chat with you today. The application season is around the corner. You can certainly follow us, where we will continue to be very active on this. And I think one of the opportunities that I would mention that hopefully most of you who are on the call are taking advantage of would be the free consultation. You can have a chance to chat with us 15-20 minutes. You can schedule it here, as you can see, or you can reach out to me directly. My email information is down at the bottom. And you can also post on our Admin Advantage page on Beat the GMAT. If you want to post your profile, I tend to those, and I'll give you feedback, written feedback on that, and others may give you feedback on that as well. So those are the opportunities for you to kind of get your information in front of an expert and get some feedback on that, certainly in advance of the application season. So with that, I will turn it back over to Beat the GMAT, and we will we'll start answering some of your questions. So go ahead and shoot them in via the webinar. All right, so the first question comes in: how early should one begin working on his or her application? So, I think the application itself, I wouldn't work on until the actual applications come out, right? So we always get clients who want to start working based on last year's application. And there's one thing I've seen, quite a bit over the last 7 years or so that I've been doing this, is that applications tend to change. Some years there's kind of a marginal change. Some years they just want to completely rethink it. So don't try to outthink the AdComs. What I would say though is just work on your brand in general. So think about, do I have brand holes? Where's my career strength? Where's my community strength? What are the things that I can do to improve? So I would actually argue that you are working on your application by proactively addressing that brand, because the one thing that we can always help clients with is the actual application itself, the essays, how strong those are, how convincing those are, how well you perform in the interview process. I can't change the last year that you could have been taking courses or getting involved in the community or whatever the case may be. So take care of that right now so when application season comes around, you're ready to go. How do we build relationships with the AdCom? When would you contact admission staff and what do you say? Well, I always recommend, buying kind of a little poodle or something like that, and you just go ahead and send that to the AdCom. They absolutely love that. That is a joke, and please do not send any poodles in the AdComs because they'll probably call me and blame me, deservedly so. But in all seriousness, I think, in terms of building relationships, it's just around connecting. You go up to them and you ask them some questions, well thought out questions about the program or your specific situation where you say, hey, I'm in the situation, I really like your program because of this, this, and this. Have you seen others in my situation, and what types of opportunities have you seen? And maybe it's a specific question about that. I'll tell you what I don't like. I don't like questions that can be answered by going online and just looking. Hey, what's your acceptance rate? What's your range of ages? Do you think that I can get in with a 650 GMAT? Right? Those aren't appropriate questions for an AdCom. You want to think about, an AdCom is really trying to find people who are a good fit. So if you're able to bring, your questions should always bring some type of knowledge with them, right? And then have some type of response back based on that knowledge. So for instance, you may say, I really noticed that you guys have a lot of experiential learnings, and I was really excited to hear about this particular program because it fits in nicely with my background. Do you think that, do you see a lot of people, using, that experience on campus or whatever? Or, hey, I'm an engineer, and, one of the things that I'm thinking about is, being an engineer from a smaller school, you guys are a much bigger school, not really sure how a lot of the people have kind of transitioned into that program. What kinds of opportunities do you have to have more small group type exercises, or whatever the case may be? So there are opportunities for you to kind of show that you've done your research to the school, but then also bring specific questions. And that's really the relationship that you want to establish. Once you've established that, then it's a matter of following up, sending an email saying, thank you for your time, really appreciate it, referencing back to something you have talked about, and then being consistent with it. So if you meet them we just finished the MBA and QS MBA tours. If you meet them at a tour, follow up with them, and then when you see them, at an event locally, you can say, hey Janet, remember we met at the MBA tour? I'm sure you don't remember everyone, but I'm Eric, and blah blah blah, and then they'll continue to remember you. So you become more than just an application. You become someone that they have a personal connection to. So if you're ever on the borderline, they can say, hey, I've talked to this person, I've spoken to them several times, and I'm very impressed with their questions. They seem to be well poised, well spoken, articulate, and thoughtful. Is reapplication a big disadvantage? I would say generally, it's not. I mean, oftentimes you can get decent feedback from people, and if you don't get specific feedback, the one thing that you have to do when you're a reapplicant is you have to show that you've made some progress from the last time you've applied. So a lot of times we'll hear kind of from AdComs that reapplicants, those who are kind of still kind of in the median range and generally met all of the other criteria, tend to have a really good chance of being accepted when they've made a decent impression, depending on what the situation was as to the reason they were denied. Kind of a common reason is kind of coming in a little bit too early, not having any demonstrated leadership or any demonstrated promotion, maybe not having a really strong story or a story that just wasn't well articulated. Oftentimes there's a concern about career changers who haven't done enough research into what they actually want to do. So depending on what your situation was, and I forgot probably the most common one, which is low GMAT GRE score. So if you've taken advantage or you've taken care of some of those challenges coming in as a reapplicant, I certainly wouldn't have any reason to believe that you should be at a disadvantage. So the question is, for people who have already taken the old GMAT, is there a chance business schools will require the new GMAT for admission? There's always a chance. I don't think it's going to happen. I think that they'll let the 5 years run their course, mainly because schools are still trying to figure out themselves how the new section is going to work. They still need to do a regression analysis on the people who performed well on the new section, how they performed in school, right? They have so much data on previous GMAT tests that they feel very comfortable with that, and that was actually one of the reasons why the GRE was a challenge initially, is they just didn't have enough data. Excuse me. So I think you're okay, but I really don't think there's a really good chance that that's going to happen to you. So you're safe. You don't have to study. So the question is, though most schools waive the TOEFL, should one still take it and report scores? Really, they're going to ask you for that if you didn't go to a school in the U.S. or you lived out here in the U.S. if you're going, to a school in the U.S. or maybe the U.K. But so I don't think it's a matter of if you're required. The simple answer is if you're required to take it, you should take it. If you're not, you shouldn't. I guess I don't know if you're looking for more than that, but generally schools have pretty defined reasons for you to take the exam and a defined criteria. So take a look at the criteria. That won't change very much. So if you can actually look online, if you can't find it in one of the application sections, it'll probably be in frequently asked questions. And schools are pretty consistent about it. But yeah, I don't know if you were looking for anything more than that. If so, I apologize, and feel free to shoot in another question. Oh, good question, Pooja. So ideal ratio of schools you should apply to considering Dream, Stretch, and Safe. And I think that question really goes to at the outset when I talked about know why you're going. So for those of you who are in a pretty good job situation, but you want to go back to business school, but if you didn't get in this year, not a big deal. You'll reapply in future years. For those of you who are in that situation, I would say be as aggressive as you can be, right? Because if you get into kind of a quote-unquote safe school, do you really want to go? I would say no. If you're in a situation, you're in a good job, you have good experience, the first year, don't be afraid to go ahead and apply to what I would call stretch schools and see if you get in. And if you get in, go. If you don't, then the next year should be followed up by a strategy of having a more balanced approach. That should also be the strategy of someone who is in a situation where they really want to go to business school that year. To answer your question, Pooja, I think that a balance would be, maybe 6 schools. I kind of like that number, where you have, you said Dream, Stretch, and Safe. I kind of like that, so I'll go with that designation. So Dream school meaning you're not directly in all of the medians there, and they're just highly competitive schools. So I would say you apply to 2 there. Your stretch schools would be still like there's no guarantee you're getting in. They're still really good schools, very selective. Maybe you apply to 3 there. And safe schools would be, okay, I'm going here because I didn't get into any of the other ones. It's convenient for me, so maybe somewhere close, or a school that you may have gone to an undergrad or something like that. If you really feel like it's a safe school, you don't need more than 1. So that would kind of be, obviously you have to adjust based on your risk tolerance. You can see where my risk tolerance is since I'm recommending only 1 safe school. But yeah, I just think you should be smart about it. And I think one of the keys to it is don't stretch yourself out so thin that you have all these schools and you really don't know much about them. Hopefully you got this from the webinar. You really need to focus in and really build relationships, because that's a differentiator. If you're just coming in, it's the first time they're ever seeing you, you've never been on campus, you've never been on a webinar, you don't know much about the school, your chances of getting in are not very good. So think about that and really, again, make it that job and make it that focus of yours to learn more about them. Melody, so how long is a period considered a resume gap, say 2 or 3 months? Does anyone have to explain any gap? So, okay, so it's a good question. So I think that, you know, 3 months to me starts to become a resume gap. If you're kind of right on that borderline, I think you can use your best judgment, especially depending on your circumstance. So if you resigned because you didn't want to do your job, that's a little bit different. If you have a 3 month gap versus potentially being laid off. But like I think really when you talk 4+ months, that's really kind of what I would consider a meaningful resume gap. You may want to explain any gap over a month. That's really kind of up to you. If you only have one, if you only have one gap and it was like 2 months, I probably wouldn't even explain that. But I think the key is if you did something meaningful in there, you should probably think about proactively explaining it because it's only going to help you. Like if you went abroad, let's say you were laid off, you kind of proactively looked for a job, you kind of found one, then you went abroad for 2 months, went to South America, you went backpacking, and you had an amazing experience. It really grounded you and recharged you, and you learned a bunch of stuff. Well, the thing I like about that is that you are now gaining an international perspective, which is critical to business in the future. That's an asset for you. So you turn that frown upside down for those of you who know that. You turn what is a weakness into a strength by virtue of the fact that you took advantage of that time. So so a lot of times they'll have places in the actual application where you can explain that. Not a big deal. You don't have to write a bunch of words. You can just talk about some of the things that you may have done in those gaps, and clearly you'll have an opportunity to talk about that in your interview as well. Can a quality application compensate for a low GMAT score or vice versa? So compensate is a strong word. So it'll help, certainly. So there is some compensation, but it's not going to kind of eliminate that. I think, if you have a low GMAT, I think things you want to focus in on are, can you take some additional courses to kind of help you mitigate that? Is there a way for you to take it again and maybe take a course if you've already taken it and you really feel like, hey, you've reached a plateau? Then I would focus on alternative transcript. I would focus on if you were potentially not very strong on the quant side, maybe there's some things that you've done, on the quantitative side at work that you can speak to and your recommenders can speak to. Hopefully there's a GPA that you can fall back on that will help mitigate that as well. I mean, the God honest truth is there are just some really smart people who don't do well on standardized tests, and that's okay, and they understand that. And there's an exception to every rule. But you obviously want to give yourself the best chance to win, and you can do that by proactively seeking some alternative ways to mitigate that. Certainly application is one, probably wouldn't be my first choice because I think application in general needs to be strong to get into a good school anyway. So hopefully that helps. What are the best ways to connect with schools if you do not live in the area and can't feasibly visit? So look, I think there's a ton of information online right now. There are tours. There are tours where we just finished kind of some spring tours in the U.S. So these, MBA, QS Tour, Access MBA, a bunch of different tours that come around. You can just do a Google search on MBA tours and you'll find them. A lot of times schools will come, via those tours. There are alumni in the area as well. You can contact the admissions office and say, hey, look, I live here. I can't get out there, but I'd love to connect with someone in my local area. Can you tell me about events? Can you connect me with alums? All of that. And there's just so much virtual information. These schools have, webinars. They have a ton of pictures and videos and all kinds of things. And I feel like if you really want to get access to these schools and want to learn about them, then you definitely can. And frankly, they'll be able to tell. They'll be able to tell how many times you attended an event. They'll be able to tell that you've spoken to this person or that person and all. And the schools we're seeing are moving more towards reach out to me. So they're asking for people's information. So there are a lot of ways for you to do it. So I would say go ahead and proactively reach out to some of the schools and really browse the website and get to know what these schools are all about now, so that when application season comes up, you're ready to go. All right, so one more question. Is there an age that is too old for a full-time program? So apparently you're old. I would say, so let me step back and kind of explain kind of the age issue. So schools don't just discriminate via age because they're discriminatory. They are really trying to build a class that is a diverse class, so one of ethnic diversity and age diversity and background and career and personal and this hodgepodge of people that in theory is going to bring a lot of different perspectives to the classroom. So that's important, but at the same time, ultimately they have several customers, but also the corporates that come and recruit. So the reason why age is a factor is because they hear from the corporations that they want kind of these younger MBA students that can come in and essentially be pimped for the first couple of years out of business school and work really hard, and then they can obviously move on and do whatever they want to do. Older candidates tend to not be interested in that. So if you're 34 years old and you've run a P&L before and you've managed a ton of people, you're not necessarily going to want to go work in an investment bank coming out of 36 years old. So that's really the background behind the whole age factor. So yeah, I mean, a lot of times you'll get clients who say, yeah, but a full-time MBA is really right for me because I want to make a career transition. I really want to immerse myself in the MBA process. So it's important to me. And for those people who really have a really strong case for wanting to go to get their MBA, maybe they're focused on entrepreneurship, so placement after school is not really as much of an issue, I would say go for it. It's interesting, a lot of the top schools tend to have larger age ranges because, well, I have my own theories on it, but they tend to have larger age ranges. So look at the age ranges, look at the kind of class profiles for the last couple of years, and get a feel for, is this school a good fit for someone who may be on the high end of that age range, or do they tend to really have a pretty tight age range in terms of, say, 24 to 29 or whatever the case may be. So there is no, to answer your question, they definitely don't put max age on it, but you may fall into a category where you may be more of an executive MBA type, or you may not really be a great fit for a full-time program that's not really looking to expand their age range. So I hope that helps. Great. Well, thank you all for your time today. Looks like that was the last question. And again, don't hesitate to reach out to Admin Advantage, set up a free consultation. Want to thank again, the Beat the GMAT community and team for allowing us to get on and conduct the webinar. And hopefully it was valuable. And please send me an email. Tell me what you thought about it. If you didn't like it, don't send me an email. But if you did, definitely send me an email and tell me if you enjoyed it. I'm just kidding. Hopefully, if good, bad, or indifferent, we'd love to hear from you. And I look forward to seeing you in the Beat the GMAT community.